right now for the Roberto Monte! And it just climbs off all by itself. It does it itself. Okay?
Yeah, you're right there with me though.
Every time I open the hangar door to go flying, I realize that I'm one of the lucky guys doing something that I dreamt of as a kid.
I am Sean D. Tucker, and this is what I do. I've put my whole adult life into learning how to fly rock and roll aerobatics. I consider it an art form, and I am one of the best in the world.
I got back stick to keep me forward and forward stick to keep me back. That's enough. Oh, yeah. I love my job, folks.
And the reason being is because I'm totally focused and dedicated to learning how to fly that airplane through the sky, upside down, right side up, tail first, tumbling end over end, 10, 15 times, flying backwards for 500 feet.
Oh, that hurt. That was good. That was good.
And what I want to do is be the best aviator that I can be the best aerial entertainer I can be. And what's very, very cool about my job is I'm still learning how to fly that airplane. It is a quest, a challenge.
All right, folks, thanks for coming to practice. You kids, live your dreams, man. Do whatever you want. It's okay.
Hello, everyone. This is Rick Siegfried. I'm an EAA Warbirds of America board member. And today I happen to be in Culpeper, Virginia. I'm sitting in a Grumman TBM Avenger, a torpedo bomber from World War II. And it's a unique airplane. This one happens to be in what they call Atlantic colors. That means it's gray and white rather than traditional blue. And it's a unique airplane because it also doesn't have a turret. It was a sub hunter. And this actual airplane is, it's called Bad Kitty. And it was in the markings of a sub hunting unit that patrolled the eastern coast of the United States in World War II. So it's a really significant airplane, and it's a pleasure to be. I was extremely fortunate to bring this airplane to the Arsenal of Democracy, which is a reenactment that we were going to do in May about the Victory in Europe Day. But it had to be postponed, as many things did, but the organizers decided, well, let's try to do it later in the year. So they picked Friday, September 25th, as our day to fly over in the most restricted airspace in the world. We're actually going to take off from our destination here in Culpeper, Virginia, fly up north of the Dulles airspace, enter what they call the freeze, or the special use airspace around Washington, D.C. And there's about 64 airplanes that are going to take part in this. We're going to fly once we're north of Dulles. We've got a whole plan. We've been briefed once on it already. And we're going to brief again on Thursday morning and do a trial. And then we're going to brief again on Friday morning and actually complete the flight. We're going to fly from Dulles. We're going to go east to the Potomac in several aircraft of these 64 in different groups. Then when we get to the Potomac, by the time we're there, we'll be down to 1,300 feet above the ground, roughly, to 1,000 feet above the ground. And we'll fly down the Potomac. And from the Potomac, we're going to follow it to stay over the open water with our significant Warbird aircraft. And then when we get to the memorial, we're going to turn left right up the mall, fly by all the Lincoln Memorial. We'll fly towards the Washington Monument on the south side of the mall, and through downtown Washington, D.C. in this very restrictive airspace. And this flight was actually completed at the end of World War II, and it was called the Arsenal of Democracy. And we are doing this as a tribute to all of our veterans, but especially, of course, our World War II veterans that served our nation so well in the during our period of the World War II. And so it's to commemorate that. It's just an honor and privilege to be part of this.
People who come to air shows want to see, it's right on your point there. Well, they want to see the jet teams, whether it's the Navy or the Air Force, we got the Thunderbirds or the Blue Angels. Well, what do they want to see next? Well, they either want to see current military aircraft or former military aircraft. Oh, Warbirds. When something like that's going on, I get the hair standing up and I feel the pride and the excitement. I'm feeling something. Well, that's what I think the Warbirds are about. They're old, gorgeous, big, beautiful, historical planes. And boy, oh boy, when the engine fires up and that noise is going on, a big round radial, or the Merlin on a Mustang, and they fly by and whistling death, and of course you're driving down, you hear that whistle going on. Those are things you never forget. Oh, and then because you were introduced to them, now you want to go back and hear them again. Well, my name is Jim Olzacki. I'm the new and current president of Warbirds of America. And I have been involved with Warbirds since the early 80s. Have been involved with getting Bob Pond's museum started in Flying Cloud Field outside of Minneapolis, and a member of and volunteering for the Warbirds of America ever since then. I had a little hiatus when I made a move back to Connecticut, but that was for a short period of time while I was getting resituated. As a result of being involved with Bob Pond, I was exposed to a full assortment of warbirds, and the more I was exposed to them, the deeper I got with falling in love and wanting to be part of it. And Bob Pond was so involved in wanting to share them with the public that it was just an easy connection for me. And together we had the museum up and running and recognized worldwide, and in a book, and going off to air shows and sharing them with other people. That's one of the things I want to try to focus on during my term. Is we have to understand how many of our members out there are people who are not necessarily pilots or owners or owning pilots. They're passionate Warbird fans. They want to read about them. They want to follow the history. They want to see them. They want to hear them. There's a ton of folks like that. And after I had finished up my time with Bob Pond's museum, and the cause for that was that I was in corporate America and transferred back to the Northeast and working in the home office in Stamford, Connecticut. I still wanted to stay involved, so I kept going back to AirVenture and going back to Bob's museum and being exposed to the planes. And it was really during that period of time when I was a little bit separated from all of that, that I really started to understand and watch and see and observe people and hear them talking to their kids and their cousins and their uncles about, well, Grandpa used to fly this plane, or I used to fly this plane. You know, one of my favorite stories is that we had Bob Pond's B-25 at AirVenture one year, and I just happened to be standing by it. And maybe a little segue story. I pretty much kept my nose out of Bob Pond's paint scheme picking when he was acquiring and restoring the different Warbirds. But when he got to B-25, I wrote him a formal letter asking him to paint and honor the most accomplished B-25 in my dad's squadron. My dad was in B-25s in the South Pacific in World War II. And Bob acknowledged that, and he painted the plane as Mitch the Witch. And I'm standing by Mitch the Witch at AirVenture, and comes this elderly gentleman and his family. And I'm watching him from maybe 20 yards away, and he's kind of normal walking, and then you see his eyes kind of look at the plane, and his pace picks up, but he was darn near in a trot when he got close to the plane. He says, "There's my plane, there's my plane." It turns out that he was on the original Mitch the Witch crew, and he was in tears. That's what it's about, people who are passionate. Well, like so many things, but especially history, it is easy to forget, not be exposed to, not understand what was going on in the world back then, and what the aviation meant, and what the greatest generation did to provide us with the freedoms we now enjoy today. And so we're just caretakers of these planes, but we're really caretakers of history. And there's so many kids out there that you can ask a historical question, especially as you go back to the World War II era. They don't even know what you're talking about. So the onus is on us to present that and make that available and try to help them understand, you know, these are memories that we need to keep on forever and honor what the greatest generation did for us to give us these freedoms. And that's also what the pilots, the owners and the pilot owners are doing as well. They're they're sharing those planes as caretakers for them and trying to make that available to more of the general public. You know, I had been involved with Bob Pond's planes and the museum and helped form it and create it and run it. And then I retired from corporate America down to Florida, and it didn't take long before I was reconnected with Link Dexter, Hall of Famer for Warbirds of America. And we started talking and chatting. Of course, he knew about my history. And that's kind of where it all started. He said, hey, you know, we need somebody to take over the local Warbird Squadron, which is Warbird Squadron 24, which covers all the state of Florida. And, you know, so I said, well, sure, I would do that. So we kind of took that over and built that squadron up to a sizable one, as sizes go for the Warbird squadrons. And I was pretty involved with that. And I knew John Baugh, another legend in Warbirds of America. And we got to know each other better and spending more time together. And he kept asking me questions and suggesting things about my involvement with Oshkosh and AirVenture and Warbirds on a national scale. And next thing I know, John had talked behind the scenes to Harold Cannon, who was the president of Warbirds at that time. And I got a call from Harold Cannon. He said, well, how would you like to join the board? Well, okay, that sounded like something that would allow me to step up everything I just spoke to and that I believe in and spread it further than Florida. So here I am, I'm on the board and we're marching along and I'm getting more involved. And I got involved with Jim Tobel, and the two of us kind of chaired and ran the Sun and Fun fly-in Warbird effort. And it kind of moved off to a new level. We wanted to reinvent ourselves and get more involvement for East Coast and Southeast Coast members. And that's another part of the equation here. We want to expose ourselves to more and more members and membership. So all of a sudden, Warbirds became way more involved with Sun and Fun. Sun and Fun had some of its biggest, better years. And I guess that success kind of led to internal talking. And Connie, the former president, and we had some discussions, and she said, okay, I've done my part. You know, I've done 2 terms. It's time to step down. You know, who wants to step up? The next thing I know, John Baugh's in the background again and talking to folks. And they said, would I like to try it? And here I am. It seemed like a daunting task, but it seemed like something I just needed to give a run at. So one of the things that, you know, Connie's got a lot of foresight and seeing ahead. She said, well, if Zack, if you're going to get more involved, you know, maybe the next thing we should do is get you introduced to all the things that are going on behind the scenes. And there's no better place to do that than at AirVenture, because all the pieces are moving and trying to coordinate with each other. So kind of 2 things happened at the same time. I was asked and accepted taking on a review of our committee structure and talk about, I'll call it a job description, but what the committee was about and who was running it and who the people were on it. And in order to do that, that's when I went around during AirVenture and introduced myself to the people and tried to understand how they worked with it. And that's when you begin to understand that if you're just a member out there or involved in a squadron or volunteering at a local level, you probably don't realize how much is going on with Warbirds of America and what they're doing on behalf of the membership to keep the Warbird movement alive and well. And so, yes, that's exactly right. Warbirds in Review. We had the new youth center, you know, what's going on with safety. I went over on the other side of the field when the air show was going on and see just how much is going on behind the scenes. There's a lot going on. And I think, you know, you asked, is there anything, how would I like to change it, alter it, modify it, improve it? And then you reflected, say, well, maybe it's not improved, but what can I do to add my touch to it? Well, I think we're talking about what I can do. I think we want to try to let membership know how much is going on. If you talk about the other aviation groups out there, you could kind of put them in a specific cubicle and say, well, they're about this one thing and they're about just that one thing. If you step back and look at what Warbirds of America is about, it's about a lot of things in a lot of places to a lot of people. And we're trying to hold that all together. And I think the challenge there is that we're all getting older. The planes are getting older. The older you get, either people are passing away or they don't have the energy to keep this, the effort that you have to put into both mentally and physically to do all of this. So, that was when it all kind of hit me. So here I am, the president now. Interestingly enough, so here we are with the pandemic and having virtual meetings and putting things on the media. And when I was back in my corporate career, one of the things a lot of my mentors said, and you'll find it written in books, sometimes challenges are really opportunities. So I thought back one day, look at this. What is the opportunity we have here? Well, we're enjoying that opportunity right now as I speak to you. So there's a lot more virtually going on. Why? Because we can't meet physically. Well, maybe that's good. Maybe we need to do more digital, more computer connections, more virtual meetings. That way we can share ourselves more with our membership. What does that mean? Well, now we can tell our membership, here's all the fronts we operate on, and maybe you didn't realize it. What are we doing in Washington with government affairs? What are we doing with the FAST program for formation and keeping all of our Warbird folks understanding and involved and represented in formation and safety training FAST? What are we doing with the ACE program and the people who have the aerobatic competency, and how are we involved with that? You keep going along the board. What are we doing to put on this huge Warbird piece of AirVenture for the EAA at Oshkosh? What are we doing at Sun and Fun? What do we do when we have NWAC? What do we do when we go to the Reno Air Races? There is so much going on. I think the next step we can take is to help our membership understand those pieces, maybe report to them on those pieces. And quite frankly, maybe somewhere along the way, we give ourselves a report card. First of all, the ICAS, the International Council of Air Shows, they get together and they put together surveys at all of the different air shows around the country, and they ask questions to the people when they're leaving. And so what are the people who come to air shows want to see? It's right on your point there. Well, they want to see the jet teams, whether it's the Navy or the Air Force, and we got the Thunderbirds or the Blue Angels. Well, what do they want to see next? Well, they either want to see current military aircraft or former military aircraft. Oh, Warbirds. So the other half of the answer to that question is, well, I remember when I was a kid, and my mom and dad would take me to the local parade, which was usually over a veterans event or something. And here comes the band. And that big bass drum is pounding in your chest. And your hair, well, as a kid, I probably didn't have hair on my arms to stand up. But when something like that's going on, I get the hair standing up and I feel the pride and the excitement. I'm feeling something. Well, that's what I think the Warbirds are about. They're old, gorgeous, big, beautiful, historical planes. And boy, oh boy, when the engine fires up and that noise going on, a big round radial, or the Merlin on a Mustang, and they fly by, and whistling death, and the Corsairs driving down, you hear that whistle going on. Those are things you never forget. Oh, and then because you were introduced to them, now you want to go back and hear them again. I think that more than anything else is why the people that one of the first things I want to do is get down to the Warbird area. What did they bring this year? Only one of them or two of them are flying, and one's here this year. And every year there's one of those, or more than one of those Warbirds. So you just got to get down there and not miss it. And that's probably a good place to talk about Warbirds in Review. Connie brought us Warbirds in Review. It's got bigger and better every year. And you can pick a segment of a particular day looking on the schedule. And not only is that plane here this year, but it's rolled over to Warbirds in Review. And we've got a former pilot, historian, and owner, and Dave Hartman talking about the history of that plane right there in front of you. So there it is in a nutshell. Two names that everybody should know out there is Bill Fisher, the executive director, and Kristen, his right-hand person as the administrative assistant. They do above and beyond the call of duty. They have a list of whatever they've been doing for years, and then somebody comes up with a new idea, and they're the first to find ways to support it and try to expand on it or introduce us to how we might electronically, digitally move in that direction because they've got experiences in that area, or they know someone over in EAA who has experience in that area. So they're the first two people that our membership and people who might be interested in the membership should contact and ask questions. They'd be happy to and very willing to point you in the direction of someone on the board who may be a little more experienced and knowledgeable in an area where your question is coming from. So, of course, then we've got the executive committee, and then we've got the officers. And we've got the beauty of the board. For a starter, the beauty of the board is that there's very little turnover. So the people who are on the board understand what the board is about, understand what Warbirds of America is about, and they're not new at it. Because of the passion across the board, somebody's got a plane, they're trying to put it together, and it's a model, and they're looking at some broken part, and they're saying, Jesus, I don't even know what this is. Probably the first thing they do is send pictures somewhere, and oh yeah, I know what that is. Only in the end model did they have that, and oh, by the way, there's only one end model in existence, and that's over at so-and-so's place. Well, you give so-and-so a call, and the first thing he does is he realizes somebody else is passionate, trying to put it together, and he's got the only end model. Now, I'm not going to guarantee you every owner would do this, but a lot of them will. The next thing you find out is they cook a deal, and they say, hey, look, I'll pay for the expense. And the guy says, I'm willing to take that part out of my airplane. I will box it up and send it to you. You go take it to your local machinist, and you have them duplicate it. You get yourself one custom made. I don't want to talk about what the cost of that might be, but, and then send it back to me and I'll put it back in my plane. And that has happened over and over again. And I think that really speaks to the subject and the question that you asked. The people are so passionate about it. They want to jump for joy that somebody else is as passionate as they are. They want to jump for joy that someone else is in love with the plane they are in love with, that someone else wants to have one of these planes. People just can't wait to hear someone be excited about their plane and that you want to have one like their plane and they want to help you have another one. Yeah. So again, let's go back to, it's not quite the beginning, it's a little bit after the beginning, but when I'm helping Bob Pond create his museum, here are the pieces, so Bob's got kind of one of everything, at least in the fighters. And, so you crawl up and you sit in the cockpit, and I can't help but tell you, you're not just looking around at the steam gauges. All of a sudden you're saying, well, geez, I wonder who sat in this cockpit. I wonder what challenges pilots who sat in this cockpit had to face. And then I start thinking about people, you kind of moving forward with your question. Well, who do I know that are legends? Randy Sohn. Randy Sohn was one of the very busy pilots for Bob Pond's aircraft. Steve Hinton was one of the very busy pilots for Bob's. And you start thinking about, holy cow, Randy Sohn. He was a guy that took Fifi out of the desert. And, if you ever read the story, you find out, man, they weren't even sure they're going to take off and if it would keep flying. And whoa, and they did that to preserve a one-of-a-kind airplane at that time. Oh, Warbirds of America said, well, Paul started and John Baugh helped them get started and Bill Harrison helped them get started and they found their way to the B-17. Holy cow, some people are stepping up to make these things happen. That makes you even more and more, you have to realize, holy cow, if they spent that much of their time and their passion to get us to that point, the onus is on us to keep the maintenance and the preservation of those planes. And then back to the last question, and the next guy that wants a B-17, what we learned when we got our B-17. And then what about the challenges for flying a B-17? Well, you got to talk to the Bill Harrisons and the Link Dexters, and guess who else has flown one of those? Connie Boland. Start thinking about Connie Boland. Holy cow. And somebody look at the list of what Warbirds she's flown. And, that's a good note to leave that subject on, because the same as the preserving the airplanes, but the people, the legends, they don't see themselves as legends. They probably don't even see themselves as doing more than the average bear. They just were doing something they wanted to do, and it worked out for themselves and for someone else. And now it becomes a story to share. There's so much of that. That's a keynote on everything Warbird involved. Yeah, I think the first thing I want to tell you is that Warbird back there, that was in Bob Pond's museum. And when Bob passed away, I cooked a deal with his widow to buy it. And so I'm not only flying a Warbird, but I'm flying a memory that I shared with someone I became very close personal friends with. Bob and I developed a relationship where we started doing personal things on the side that were not aviation related, just because we became friends. He was like a big brother. He was like a father to me. We talked about personal things. And I'm going to segue on that. You talk about my flying experience and my plane. So I'm approaching Bob in the very beginning, because he had only 5 Warbirds at the time. I'm saying only. Some people are happy to have one, right? I said, have you ever thought about opening and running a museum? You know, you've probably got the money, but don't have the time. I might have the time, but I certainly don't have the money. And, you know, one thing led to another, and we thought alike business-wise. So he said, run with it, start a museum for me. We started building that museum. And again, like I said, since we're personal, I'm standing at the museum outside one day with Bob, and a steerman comes taxiing up, and he turns into where you enter the museum grounds. And I turn to Bob, Bob, do you know who that is? And I'm going to kind of cheat. I always like to kind of make believe I'm Bob. Well, Zack, as a matter of fact, I do know that steerman is mine. I just bought it. And as you well know, anybody who ever became a Warbird pilot in World War II started in a steerman. It's now time for you to start flying a steerman. You know, Bob had $1 million fighters. He didn't need a steerman, though it's nice to have one. Taxiing in one day is a T6 Texan. The end of the story is, Zack, everybody who flew in a steerman before they got in the fighters, they went to the T6. And it's time for you to start flying a T6. You know, I can't prove it, but to this day, I'm going to choose to believe that Bob and I were so close that he bought those planes so that he could watch me take the next step. And I'll never forget that. And so the last step was that I finally retired to Florida, and it was another kind of hiatus from Warbirds. Well, one thing led to another. It's the little pieces of the story we don't need, but Bob passed away. I contacted the widow. Bob protected most of his collection, which is now the Palm Springs Air Museum. But there were about 6 planes not inside that community. The widow and I had a couple of conversations. Steve Hinton got involved, and lo and behold, I now hold and own a Warbird that was in that museum that I helped start, whatever the heck it is now, 35 years ago or something. And I'm flying it around and trying to keep that memory. And I'm flying it around, and I want to get formation involved. The guy who's training me or looking over my shoulder is involved in a demo team. Well, lo and behold, I got my formation card, and the demo team tapped me on the shoulders, and we just lost one of our members. How would you like to fly with us? So that's the answer to your question, and what I answered in the earlier question. You just keep swinging and being involved and doing what's fun, and the next thing just kind of presents itself, and then it's your option. You know, you say yes or no, and I am thankful to be lucky enough to have all these stories to tell, share, view, and you know, now it's time for me to pass that baton and try to help others have the same experiences that I've had.
Hello, everyone. This is Rick Siegfried. I'm an EAA Warbirds of America board member. And today I happen to be in Culpeper, Virginia. I'm sitting in a Grumman TBM Avenger, a torpedo bomber from World War II. And it's a unique airplane. This one happens to be in what they call Atlantic colors. That means it's gray and white rather than traditional blue. And it's a unique airplane because it also doesn't have a turret. It was a sub hunter. And this actual airplane is, it's called Bad Kitty. And it was in the markings of a sub-hunting unit that patrolled the eastern coast of the United States in World War II. So it's a really significant airplane, and it's a pleasure to be. I was extremely fortunate to bring this airplane to the Arsenal of Democracy, which is a reenactment that we were going to do in May about the Victory in Europe Day. But it had to be postponed, as many things did. But the organizers decided, well, let's try to do it later in the year. So they picked Friday, September 25th, as our day to fly over in the most restricted airspace in the world. We're actually going to take off from our destination here in Culpeper, Virginia, fly up north of the Dulles airspace, enter what they call the freeze, or the special use airspace around Washington, D.C. And there's about 64 airplanes that are going to take part in this. We're going to fly, once we're north of Dulles, we've got a whole plan. We've been briefed once on it already. And we're going to brief again on Thursday morning and do a trial. And then we're going to brief again on Friday morning and actually complete the flight. We're going to fly from Dulles. We're going to go east to the Potomac in several aircraft of these 64 in different groups. Then when we get to the Potomac, by the time we're there, we'll be down to 1,300 feet above the ground, roughly, to 1,000 feet above the ground. And we'll fly down the Potomac. And from the Potomac, we're going to follow it to stay over the open water with our significant Warbird aircraft. And then when we get to the memorial, we're going to turn left right up the mall, fly by all the Lincoln Memorial. We'll fly towards the Washington Monument on the south side of the mall, and through downtown Washington, D.C. in this very restrictive airspace. And this flight was actually completed at the end of World War II, and it was called the Arsenal of Democracy. And we are doing this as a tribute to all of our veterans, but especially, of course, our World War II veterans that served our nation so well in the during our period of the World War II. And so it's to commemorate that. It's just an honor and privilege to be part of this.
Stacy, smile and wave.
Hi, Ben.
The event this weekend was just a fly-in that we hosted privately, Jordan and I, between Hoosier Aviation and Vintage Wings Aircraft. We decided that we wanted to have our Warbirds and flying family, and not discriminating against general aviation, have those in too, and just have a flying family reunion. So we hosted an event that brought airplanes in, and we just had a good time, and it was great to have all of our flying friends there. We would like to have future events. This was a lot of fun. We hope everyone had a good time. If you come to a Hoosier Vintage fly-in and you leave hungry, well, that's on you. Apparently, we're food pushers here. So, no, we had a great time. We're thankful for everyone that came in. We had a safe fly-in. We had a great time. Thank you all for coming.
Hoosier Aviation Flying was an awesome event, and Jordan and Nikki Brown outdid themselves with the ability to put something together and to share an otherwise lost opportunity this year. You get to see some of the flying that was done. See a lot of formation flight with some of the NATA aircraft. See some footage of the USA Sox Black Daggers jump team and their chance to utilize this weekend as a training weekend, and Frost Services and their safety response team and their ability to utilize this weekend as a training opportunity as well. Some of the people that came down, the Warbirds of America members, flight line volunteers, pilots, and some of the social gatherings that occurred during the event as well.
I'm Nicole Brown, and my husband Jordan and I own Hoosier Aviation, also Vintage Wings, one of the airplanes behind us. And we have been at the airport since 2011, and we love airplanes. The event this weekend was just a fly-in that we hosted privately, Jordan and I, between Hoosier Aviation and Vintage Wings Aircraft. We decided that we wanted to have our Warbirds and flying family, and not discriminating against general aviation, have those in too, and just have a flying family reunion. So we hosted an event that brought airplanes in, and we just had a good time, and it was great to have all of our flying friends here. So the safety portion of our fly-in event, we are good friends with Frost Airshow Safety Team. We feel like they are an invaluable portion to any air show. They bring a level of comfort and safety, and we had a lot of Warbirds and a lot of friends on the field, and we wanted to make sure that they knew that we cared, that in case of an emergency, we had people here that had their back. They know every extraction policy. They know everything that they possibly can about each individual aircraft, that if there were a catastrophic event, they can get those individuals out of their aircraft and to safety as fast as possible.
My name is Bob Janicek, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Frost and one of the co-founders that started about 4 years ago. So Frost came up with the concept after the airshow industry had a bad year where we lost a lot of our friends. And being from NASCAR country, I always thought it was interesting that the airshow industry is one of the few industries that didn't have its own safety team that specialized in aircraft. So through some friends and everything else, we put the concept together and started back in 2017. Normally we get about 10 to 12 air shows a year, and this year was supposed to be a really good year, but COVID kind of took that away from us. But 2021 looks like it's going to be a really good year.
Okay. And what is some of the equipment you use with Frost?
So Frost utilizes some of the fastest and most powerful ATVs in the market. Can-Am, BRP is our primary vehicles, and we modify them with compressed air foam and compressed purple K systems that are the highest standard in the industry and tailored specifically to the air show.
What's your typical response time?
I normally do a drill on Friday of air shows. On an average, our response time is about 8 seconds because we can be placed fairly close to the runway and inside the air show environment.
far as Oshkosh, my family extends rather largely up there, between flight line volunteers to pilots, production crews, maintenance people, camping individuals. It's a little bit of everything for me, but it's all Warbirds of America. And while I'm up there, I run ramp ops for Warbirds in Review and Warbird Alley with my good friend Matt Rockmorton, who is also a Terre Haute native and was part of the fly-in. And since we had no airplanes to play with, we wanted to go down there and have some fun with others that felt the same way. So a large contingent of the flight line volunteers from Oshkosh came down since they weren't able to have their Oshkosh moment. And this was their opportunity to get their Warbird fix in, as well as see individuals that we normally don't get to see maybe once or twice a year. So I arrived Wednesday. The event wasn't until Friday, Saturday, but I arrived early just to see friends that are down there. So it was my opportunity to spend a little extra time with some Warbird friends. And while I was down there, I was asked to go down there and just help with some of the flight line operations, just marshaling the aircraft and just maintaining a safety standard that we would normally have at Oshkosh down on the Terre Haute flight line at Hoosier Aviation. So since I was planning on attending the Hoosier Aviation fly-in, I talked with Sleeping Dog Productions, who I work with at Oshkosh with Warbirds and Reviews, and suggested this would be a wonderful event to produce and put together as far as video and be able to share it with the rest of the Warbird family out there, since not everyone was as lucky as I to attend an event like this with everything else being canceled this year. So I suggested that we go down and get some video and do some interviews and just share an aviation event that actually happened. And so we started putting our heads together as far as what we could do, and went down there with a camera and just started filming.
We're part of the USASOC, that's the U.S. Army Special Operations Command parachute team. It's the Black Daggers. We're also known as the Black Dagger Recruiting Support Detachment. Our primary job for USASOC is to get out and make the public aware of the U.S. Army Special Operations. The Black Daggers it's a 24-man team, and it's made up of volunteers from throughout the Army Special Ops community. Primarily, we've got Green Berets, we've got PsyOps, Civil Affairs, and Ranger Regiment guys. So we travel all over the country and the world doing different demonstrations and working with the recruiters and just letting people know what jobs there are out there.
Positive communication. I'm positive.
Did you go out?
Chris Hardy, Staff Sergeant, United States Army. Joined back in 2004 out of Dallas, Texas. Joined as a combat medic. Really enjoyed my time as a combat medic, but started seeing different things out there in the Army that we could do. And one of those was small teams. We had Special Forces, Civil Affairs, PSYOPs. And went through selection, chose Civil Affairs, and our job is centered more around between the military and the civilian side. So we talk to both and find a mission set in between those two to basically remove civilians from the battlefield and do so that our counterparts can do what they need to do. You can't find a job outside of the Army that's not inside the Army. So that's one of those great things that we try to put out, is that if you can find a job in the Army, you'll get that on-the-job training and be able to move forward with your career.
Staff Sergeant Zack I joined the Army in 2007, came in as 11 Bravo Infantry. It's been about 7 years as infantry. Kind of got tired of the same thing every single day. Saw more options that I could do. Saw that I had the possibility to use more brain power and be productive within psychological operations, so I decided to go to the psychological operations selection and assessment. Got picked up. I've been in PSYOP for about 6 years now. Did a couple deployments with them. Came to the Black Daggers about 2.5 years ago, and now I'm sitting on my 3rd year.
The way that my commanding general a couple years ago looked at it is the Black Daggers are a shiny object in the sky that then land on an airfield. You know, we jump into an air show, we walk through the crowd, and we can drag some of those interested parties to where we're repacking and where the recruiters can conversate with them. A lot of the jumps that we do are in front of influencers, not necessarily potential recruits, but like I said, our primary focus is just letting people know what we do. And like me, I've got 8 combat deployments over a 20-year period. But you know, the common thought is that Green Berets are always gone and you're never at home and stuff. And this gives me an opportunity to talk to some people on the ground. So being a Green Beret, I've started my skydiving career military freefall, and so I've jumped in Japan, Korea, Cambodia, Australia, all over. I feel like military-wise, the things that we do now and the demonstrations that we perform are completely different, but kind of along the same lines. I think that between the D-Day jump and then Miami Air Show last year, we put 8 guys on the skid of a Sealand caravan. That was pretty cool.
Jumping out about a mile over the water and having to make it back to the beach.
Yep. Okay, so some of the things that we did over the weekend, we did a combat demo. That's one of the things that sets us apart from all the other teams on the circuit. We're the only team that does the combat simulation. Being special operations, the majority of us come here with military freefall backgrounds. The military uses skydiving to insert behind enemy lines, and so we kind of bring that to the show by jumping with rucksacks and our fatigues with a dummy weapon. And kind of the way that we like starting a lot of the air shows is we will open up with that combat demo. The first jumpers on the ground land in a perimeter and kind of seize the DZ, allowing the POW and the U.S. flags to come in onto that secure site.
Another thing that we do is canopy relative work, or crew. It's where we tend to get different canopies pin each other and stack up on top of one another. We sometimes do 2, 3, or 4 different people in one stack. We can go into different configurations where we have a flag that'll drop below 2 or 3 people. You can do a attached by the hip and do a side-by-side flag. You can also take that into a down plane, which is where both canopies turn away from each other and barrel to the ground. And then we also use today the 5,000 square foot flag in a 2-stack formation.
A couple of months ago, we ended up getting Betsy, that's her name. She's 5,000 square feet of America. So it's a big old giant flag. We jump it like a rucksack. And today was the first day that we've actually stacked crew with it, and we're going to keep on working that technique to make it bigger and better. But I mean, you can see that flag for 20 miles away. So normally we get out and we pop it pretty high. The terminal velocity, there's a lot of weight hanging underneath the canopy, and so if we get 10,000 feet, that flag's out by probably 8,000, and just lets everybody know what's going on.
Social media has so many functions these days, and one of the best parts of social media is the ability to share. And the people out there in the aviation world share so much already, but with the advances in production and the ability to share video, not only live but also pre-produced, it's an opportunity to put the Hoosier Aviation fly-in together as one of those packages and put it on social media and allow people, not only current members of Warbirds of America, but also prospective members, for them to be able to see what Warbirds is all about, how engaged the members are with not just the aircraft, but the people, because there's an outstanding group of people in the Warbirds of America organization, and every year I get to meet new members and members that I might not have met before, but it's an outstanding organization, and the ability to share the events and put together pieces that show that family connection is just outstanding.
This was a lot of fun. We hope everyone had a good time. If you come to a Hoosier Vintage fly-in and you leave hungry, well, that's on you. But apparently we're food pushers here. So no, we had a great time. We're thankful for everyone that came in. We had a safe fly-in. We had a great time. Thank you all for coming.